Hello and welcome to the 6+++ Show, a podcast for your wargaming and 40k needs. Hobby talk, tactics, tournament reports, lore and much more. We have it all. Please welcome your host for the evening, Tom.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and third generation hybrids to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom, and I'm very tired because I've actually had to do some work this week, which I'm not used to. And I am joined tonight by someone I expect will be familiar to you, and someone who has been the bane of the 6++ team every time they've encountered him on the tabletop so far. It is the one and only Innes Wilson. How are you doing, Innes?
Hi Tom, thank you for having me. I'm not doing too bad. I'm joining you in that I actually had to work this week, but not enjoying that. But
it's rough, right?
No, it's horrible. I don't recommend being an adult to anybody who has the option not to be.
And tonight we're going to be talking about Genestealer cults for our State of Play series. And Innes, you are obviously one of the foremost sort of forces of Hivemind players in the world, really, at this stage. You've been on a hell of a run with the Tyranids and put some results in with the Genestealer cults as well. Do you want to tell people a little bit about your background in 40k and what you're currently working on and what you're currently doing? Because obviously you do a whole ton of stuff, right?
Yeah, I've done everything under the sun. I think I'm on like my fourth podcast now. Like it's a graveyard behind me. So my name's Innes. I am one of the Scottish 40k community. I am the captain of the Scottish national team. I have been for the past 3 years now, which is weird to say. I generally play in the UK. I've done WTC a few times. I'm hopefully going over to Ravio. I got into 40k about 14 years ago now.
Wow.
Jesus,
Yeah,
that time flies. A little over half my life, which I'd say to treat people out.
The young one, that's good.
So yeah, I've been got into 40k through sort of like I went in looking for Heroescape models. Came out with an Assault on Blackreach set in 5th edition. I was like, I guess this is my life now, and I never really looked back.
Fair play to that salesman for talking you around and making that work.
Well, I played a demo game and came back the next day for an Assault on Blackreach, because my parents were like, he won't shut up about this, so they were like, it'll shut him up for a while, and it did the opposite.
The parents learn that appeasement never works with games.
No, absolutely not.
It doesn't
do not negotiate with child terrorists.
No, don't do it. No, exactly.
From there, I played off and on through high school, and then when I went to uni, I did the opposite thing people normally do, where they get out of it at university because they're too busy like doing uni stuff, and was like, all this uni stuff sucks. I need a hobby, so I went and played 40k. And then I just kind of stuck with it. I got into competitive play sort of the end of 2014, and I've been doing events ever since. Took a year off for the necessary requirement of COVID, and that's been about it. Other than that, I've been averaging more than an event a month for 5-6 years.
Amazing. Yeah, really, really good. And actually, it's a question I have, because obviously the whole time I've been aware of you, because I'm relatively new back into the game, you've been the Scotland captain. And I guess I'm curious, how long were you involved in the Scotland team before you made captain?
So I applied in 2016 was the first year I applied. Didn't make the team that year. And then I made it in 2017, couldn't play, I had to and coach that year. I was broke as hell, would be the easy way to say it. I couldn't afford to fly, but the guys offered to fly me out and if I was coaching. So I did that, and then I played 2018, 2019, vice captain in 2018 when we came third. Took a year off to finish my uni in 2019. 2020 was the first year I was captain, which was the COVID year, which never happened. So I was involved with the team for 4 years as either practice partner or player, and then I've been the captain since. And won't somebody please take it off me?
You're waiting for someone to step up as a challenger.
No, I'm begging for someone to please take the shackle off my leg. No, I love all of you guys. I promise. Something like that.
It's hard to imagine anyone else at the moment, but I'm sure it'll change at some point. But no, that's fantastic. And you are obviously one of the things I like about obviously you're the first time I actually heard you was talking on the Honest Wargame. I think you did a tier list on the Honest Wargame, and I was like, who is this guy? Because the thing I liked, there's a thing I always say is like, there's nothing more egalitarian than like complete disrespect for literally everyone and everything. As soon as I heard you chat, I was like, oh, I just love it. Just like that, there are no prisoners. Like, it's absolutely, it goes for everyone. Like, it goes for everyone, including himself. Like, no mercy. Like, just completely laying into the ridiculousness of the game and not afraid to sort of stir it up. And you've got your own show that's, I think, doing really, really well, right? In Stat Check.
Yep, so I'm 1/5 of StatCheck. We are I want to say we're a podcast, but I feel like that's selling short, like the guys behind the scenes who do all of our stat work.
Yeah, the
So
numbers
yeah,
side's amazing.
yeah,
Like
the
really,
number
really
side is
cool.
so much better than everything that we do. We come onto a show once and we can talk for like an hour and a half tops. Those guys do so much work. So we have a podcast which is a once weekly show, and then we have our website which has our metadata dashboard. We run a 40k elo. We run a version of 40k elo that are just for your faction play. So we prefer that when we run elo because people ask us about it if we don't.
Yeah.
We have a blog where you do a meta report once a month. Which started last month, so I'll call it once a month once I've done a second one. Until then, it's just a thing I did.
I've got a few things that were going to be series and ended up being just things I did, but we live in hope, right? You never know.
Exactly. Well, I've already organised. I've organised the guests for this month, so I feel like I'm obliged to do it now that I've told Vic I want him to. We told Vic that he's coming on to help us.
Yeah, no, that would be excellent. No, that'd be very, very good. Yeah, no, I mean, StatChat, as you say, it's got a bit of everything because it's got a really fun chat show element. You know, yourself and the other guys, Anthony and
Nathan.
Nathan, that's the lad. You're all very good fun to listen to. But there's a really, as you say, a very well thought out and well built in statistical element underneath it that's really, really useful, and I think makes for very, very useful listening if you want to get better at 40k and you want to understand the meta as well. And I've enjoyed the episodes a lot more since the meta stopped being absolute
arse. Yeah, no, we weren't enjoying the episodes when it was terrible. It's really hard to find fun things to talk about when there's nothing fun to talk about.
Yeah,
but yeah,
exactly.
the core conceit of the show is myself and Anthony are. I'm going to say high level 40k players, and I still feel bad saying that, but I'm going to say it anyway because people won't let me not. So when we talk about 40k, even if to me it sounds pretty dull and it generally tends to be pretty helpful for people. So I'm just trying to lean into the talk more about 40k side. And then we were like, all right, cool. So those guys are assholes who are good at 40k. Let's pad it with substance, and we added stats, and was like, this is. We can sell this, like in general terms, and that's worked out pretty well so far. So we've been running for about 4 months ourselves. We ran for about 6 months as part of Best in Faction with the 40k Fight Club show. So yeah, we're coming up for a year in February, so 4 months away.
Yeah, fantastic.
Terrifying.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm a massive fan, and my new job. On some days there's about an hour commute, and that show is a pretty much perfect slice. As an early morning, I need that lift, and it's been quite good for that in the last few weeks. So yeah, no, wonderful. Okay, well, let's get into our state of play because obviously, yeah, you've been absolutely slaying with Tyranids for quite a while, but you're also a very well known sort of Genestealer cults aficionado and player as well. So I thought it'd be fun to get you on to chat about them because they're in an interesting spot these days. They've sort of started to creep back into view in tournaments and back into a few top placings and a few things sort of breaking through since the WTC. That means there's a conversation to be had. There's some stuff being tried, and for someone who plays GC cults but has never quite managed to make it work, I guess maybe I'm hoping I can steal some ideas here.
Hey, absolutely.
But we'll start with the basics. So let's have your GSC origin story. How did you get to play them in the first place?
So I'll do my origin story, and then I've got a nice little anecdote that will explain where Genestealer cult are in the meta right now. Okay. So I got into Genestealer cult with, as I'm assuming most players did with Deathwatch, who played them for a while, with the Deathwatch Overkill box set that came out in 7th edition. So that was it was the introduction of Deathwatch and Genestealer cult to the game. I played Tyranids at the time. They were allies of convenience, which meant you could ally them with Tyranids and they could join each other's squads and stuff like that. So I went, cool, they have access to invisibility, which was a spell that was insanely busted defensively. And I went, right, cool. So I'm buying them so I could stick that on squads. And then so I did that, and it was terrible. You definitely did not want to do that. And then the book came out, which gave you all of the really, really cool stuff, like going back into reserve and dropping in and dropping out. Like you could go back into reserve, you got models back, and it's super complicated. Like you had to have an organizer box for all your little squads of 10 dudes. And I went, that costs way too much money. Didn't play it. So I didn't really play Genestealer Cult through 8th edition, through 7th edition. When the 8th edition index dropped, I picked up the Tooth and Claw box set that had the Aberrants, and I mixed them in with Tyranids and stuff like that.
Came out, right?
So the Aberrants already existed, but they got the other weapon options, and they got the stop sign guy, who was my absolute hero. And love me some stop signs. It's disgusting what they've done to them in the corridor.
Yeah, no, it's completely in the wilderness right now, but such a cool model.
So yeah, I got into them properly with the 8th edition codex. So I picked up I picked up a bunch of stuff. I played a few GTs with the first 5-round event I ever scored 100 WTC points in was with Genestealer Cult right
amazing.
before my list went up 450 points. Like literally, they played it one weekend. The next weekend they were like, all right, everything in that list up. It technically went up 5,000 points because that was when they misprinted neophytes. They put the neophyte up to 55 points a model from 5. That was that. So my list technically went up 4,000 points or something stupid like that. But the actual list went up like 450 points. And then I kind of put them aside for a bit. I took them to WTC in 2018. I played them with Tyranids. So I had, or 2019, sorry, I had Tyranids, Kraken, like 80 Genestealers, and then like the mix and match of the characters from Genestealer Cults. I really enjoyed that list. I played something like 10 tournaments straight with that list. I was very, very comfortable with it. And then in 9th edition, the start of the edition didn't really happen. I played them a little bit on and off, just like kind of in practice. I tried like Horde Tyrannid lists. It just wasn't really anything I enjoyed. The book came out, and then I was like, okay, I'll update my collection. It kind of just been stored in a box, used for soup whenever I needed it. So I picked up the 5 trucks that I needed and metamorphs and all that kind of stuff. I took it to a GT, which I managed to win. Because of good old WTC scoring, I lost to Tau 11-9, but scored the most points in the tournament, so I won the tournament anyway.
Nice.
Blood of Kitten still has me listed as coming second in the tournament, which is a goddamn lie.
Tau at that time were horrific for GSC as well.
So
like that.
I have my heartbreak story about that one. I almost killed a full 400 point squad of Crisis Suits in reserve, so I fully blocked them turn 2, and then turn 3. Onva's bodyguard killed the last bike, and they got to drop in like a 2-inch gap.
Oh, outrageous!
It was like there was a tiny chance I could hit it with like a 12-inch. No, like after that there was like a 12-inch charge with Genestealers. If I had hit it, I think I rolled like a 10, and I was a couple of inches off the consolidation. But I also killed the Devil Wish, and it blew up and killed 5 Genestealers, so that didn't work either. So it was just like heartbreak after heartbreak in that game. But that was really good. My fun anecdote for where Genestealer Cult lie this edition. Genestealer Cults won a GT the weekend they dropped, which was played by TJ Lanigan playing Twisted Helix.
Yep.
They won 2 GTs the next weekend. One was the Twisted Helix list that I played. One was I want to say hybrid mixed cults list played by Nick Nanavati in the States. And then they didn't win another event until the WTC. 6 months later.
They really weren't getting a look in, were they? Like as far as events goes, it just wasn't happening. Like.
Yeah, and the first one they've gotten since then, Eric Latherus then won a major with them the next, the week after, and I think that's it. I think he might have won another. They've won four, maybe 5 now GTs total this edition with a new book that came out the same weekend as Custodes. Remember Custodes? Remember how good they were? Yeah,
there were a whole bunch of other books that came out, and everyone was just like, "Yeah, we're going to go and play these." Genestealer Cult popped up. There were a few like showcase videos of them just bouncing off Custodes, and then everyone just kind of forgot. And so that for me has been one of the interesting things. Like they're never that highly represented or played anyway, right? Even when they're good, because it's a relatively new range, it's quite expensive, and it's a fiddly army to play. But it was just one of those cases where certainly I'd been playing them a little bit. In the sort of year or two before the new book, and when that came, I was like, this reads really well. Like it's exciting. There's some fun rules. It's got endless sort of jank and weirdness going on in it. But then actually, when you get it on the tabletop, I was really struggling to make it sort of translate, especially in the era of books that were coming through in that time at night, which was just people just chucking one mental book out on us at a time, right? And it wasn't one of those, which I think was why it went under the radar for so long. But obviously, Eric and then yourself and others have obviously demonstrated recently that there are builds in there right now that can have a say in this current meta. So I mean, let's talk about that. Let's think about why do you think they've reappeared? What's the place for Genestealer Cult right now in the current meta?
We can talk a little bit first about why the builds that we were playing don't work, which is like the Twisted Helix melee builds, and then also like we saw a little bit of Myriad Cult stuff with like the Industrial Affinity, but a lot of people leaning on like Impassion for +1 to hit, which is one of the other custom traits you can take.
Yes, the sort of melee combo,
The biggest thing that we noticed from playing Genestealer Cults is that everybody wants to play it as a melee army, and everything in the book seems like it's set up to not work for a melee army. But all your good data sheets are melee armies. So almost all of the cool and interesting pre-game upgrades, like the prepared plannings or whatever they're called,
Yeah.
or like pre-game move, plus attack when you charge,
Yeah.
3d6 charge out of deep strike. They're all really cool, and then you realize you're buffing guardsmen with them, and guardsmen don't survive combat. It doesn't really matter what you charge.
No.
I lose Genestealers to rhinos regularly. Like, it just happens.
It's just so true.
So the army is very powerful defensively on turn 1. You have blips, which are probably the best alpha strike protection of the game. You literally can't be bombed turn 1 if you don't want to be if you go second, which means you almost always get a chance to respond to planes. You almost always can't be alpha struck by charging. You can't be redeployed onto because the blip stops any movement through or within 9 of it, and you get
huge.
like
Just
15
huge.
of them in your deployment zone if you really want them.
Yeah.
You can move them. You can have up to 2 fake ones if you really need to, with from every angle, and the Genestealer called the Genestealer Proficient the Genestealer Proficient plan. They came from below. You can either move them backwards, or they can just jump back into reserve from every angle. Lets you go back into strat reserve and have an empty blip. So you have such amazing turn 1 protection, but the list really wants you to go, because you have pre-game moves, you have the bikes that pre-game move, you have the Genestealers that pre-game move. You get to choose where all your lines are, so you get to set up your transports to be directly across the thing you want to charge. You jump out, advance charge, and hit them with your AP2 Strength 4 attacks, or maybe Strength 5 if you're playing Helix. And it's just not quite good enough. It works as a support piece, but as the main focus of the army, you really have to start splashing onto heavy weapons. So the rock drills for the mortal wounds on 6s are an insanely powerful weapon. Even in the current meta, they are insane. Oh, nobody. Yeah, when you tell somebody I've rolled 3 6s to hit, so that's 6 mortal wounds and 10 auto wounds. Your turn.
Every time you have to. Every game, I have to explain it literally every time I do it. It's like, no, just wounds. It's wounded. That's how it works. And they're just like, what?
Wound.
I'm not
you play against, or you play Impassioned Affinity, Impassioned and Industrial Affinity for ignore modifiers and +1 to hit on your rock cutter, so your AP4 flat damage 3. And it feels so good until you miss a charge for any reason whatsoever. And then you're just stuck, because yes, you get Deep Strike AOA. You can generally get +1 to charge from an icon ward if you set up for it. But 7s from reserve are not super reliable, and you only get one CP reroll. So
and you're talking about units that literally just die, right? As soon as they're out,
you can't live
die.
on the board. So you either play out of transports, and what we found is that generally the board's getting denser in 9th edition has meant that getting transports off the board for melee units, or for more than one melee unit, is really difficult. So you'll see like a single Bloody Rose Rhino, or you'll see a couple of Sagittars or Land Fortresses in Votan, or people run one transport because they can put it in the best place to deploy, and then everything else you can move around. But if you try to move like 3 rock grinders, 3 trucks on the board, it's incredibly difficult, especially if you're running bikes as well, which want to use those spaces as well. It's really hard to play transport based armies on like UKTC or WTC boards. I don't know. I don't really know how the GW open boards are. I couldn't comment. But it's just, I don't know. Rhinos, I feel like I used to see them a lot, and now I see them a lot less. And I kind of think that might be because terrain has generally gone denser in 40k recently.
Yeah, I think so. As you say, you can usually like nestle 1 or 2 in, but there's only ever going to be sort of a spot to hide like 1 in a place that's valid in terms of actually projecting threat, right? Which is what you want to do with
even running the rock grinders in the list I'm running now, which runs 3 rock grinders and 3 squads of 5 acolytes in them. The third one almost always goes somewhere garbage, and that's with me being able to literally choose where I deploy them. Like I get to put a blip so that it's on. I can go on either side of the wall because the rock grinder comes out within an inch of it, and it can come out in a nice position or a safe
I'll write
position.
that down. That's my first good tip of the day. Here we go. Blips either side of wall.
So if you put the blip so that the center is wholly within 1 inch of the edge, you can come out on either side of it. Which when you're deploying trucks is insanely valuable, because that could be 15 inches of movement.
Yes.
I would definitely consider that one.
Yeah, that's
especially
really
UKTC boards. You could put them on either side of the big L.
Perfect. Yeah. No, that's really smart.
But even with that, you run out of places to put them that are relevant if you're trying to
definitely.
So what that comes back around to is, you remember Crossfire?
Yeah.
That mechanics gives you like +1 to hit and wound. Do you remember like Chaos Space Marines are just spending CP on that? And what if we just lent into that bit?
Yeah.
So the mad genius himself, Eric Lathras, went, this +1 to hit and wound seems good. What if I just went for ignoring modifiers on all my guns and then took 3 garbage bin traits that make me tanky? So you take ignore modifiers on your guns, which should probably be a 3-point myriad trait.
Easily a 2 or 3 point trait, and they've
I
given
would
it
make
away
it,
for 1.
if you wanted to nerf Genestealer Cult, which you shouldn't, you should make it 2.
No. No nerfs.
Probably 3 if you wanted to actually make a difference. Then you run Industrial, so you run Accustomed to Toil, which gives you Can't Be Wounded on 2s, which on a Horde army, it's not amazing, but you definitely notice it, and it makes you never have to tell your opponent your toughness. You just tell them 3s.
No, that's it. It does add up. Yeah, so I've run that for the first time in the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it does. It definitely adds up. It's just
it's just that little bit of edge off of the efficiency. It means units live where they shouldn't. It takes a little bit more to kill something than the people want to. It keeps your characters randomly alive sometimes. Nothing funnier than somebody trying to all right, I'll just punch your Calamorph, and you're like, all right, so he stood next to 20 neophytes.
Oh yeah,
and he just doesn't die, and then he falls back and shoots. And then on top of that we run War Convoy, which gives your vehicles and bike models gain a 6+ to ignore wounds, which again, once it's not a big buff, but it's another marginal durability increase on top of that Can't Be Wounded on 2s. And then finally you have basically dealer's choice. You can either run Cold-Eyed Killers or you can run the garbage one, but Cold-Eyed Killers isn't really good either. Cold-Eyed Killers is on 6s to wound and melee, you gain additional AP. We run that because it kind of helps Genestealers. They get to AP 4. Which means
it's all right on some of the melee.
You can punch through things like an Armiger. If you're not playing Marines, it gets you your Jackals and your Neophytes. If they randomly end up in combat, can spike a 6 and punch a wound or 2 through. Against Knights, it's actually kind of nice because you just become AP 1 basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we take that. The other option is you can take +1 to Pioneer Consolidation. And if you were playing a Psyker, you could take reroll 1s and 2s to cast, which if you were taking a Psyker is what you would take. So that's the kind of the core concept is, what if we just took all of the shooting stuff that's pretty good.
Yeah, and which the book definitely wanted us to use, right? The book was really leading you there.
The book, what it feels like the book was trying to lead you to was you use the shooting to set up for your melee, because there's a lot of really cool melee stratagems based on Crossfire, Fight Last, Can't Overwatch, Can't Heroically Intervene. We use Can't Heroically Intervene a lot. That is
so good right now. Yeah, so good.
Yeah, especially when you're able to apply it automatically with the Nexus and the Sanctus. You can just characters anywhere. Just stop them from intervening. Sanguinary Guard. It makes playing the primary game really, really easy for this army.
Yeah.
So the core concept is that you have the very best of the combat units in the army. So Rock Grinders and Genestealers, and then you run a couple of other random combats. So you have a couple of squads of Acolytes because they are cheaper than 5-10 man Neophyte squads. They fit in Rock Grinders and they can punch. It's 16 AP2 attacks, which is
not too bad.
You take it.
Yeah.
And then finally we go all in on the best of the shooting elements. So the version that I've been playing is 3 Rock Grinders with seismic cannons, 3 full squads of Jackals with 2 of the Flamers, and then 2 Demolition Charges in each squad. One squad has 1 for points considerations. I think Eric's bumped those up to 3s with the changes to beast. We'll talk about Eric's updates to the list later on, but this is what I've been playing, so it's what I'm comfortable talking with. And then 2 squads of Neophytes with shotguns and 4 seismic cannons. And then there's the version I've been playing is 1 squad of 7 hand flamers with an 8 sergeant. And that squad gets perfect ambush, so it's another way to set up Crossfire, because you pop perfect ambush for +1 to hit and wound on a target. Your flamers, you're guaranteed the 5 auto hits to then give it an actual Crossfire token, so that your other stuff can then shoot as well. So between the Nexus, the Sanctus, who auto hits, Nexus applies a token automatically, and the Flamers, you have 3 guaranteed Crossfire tokens.
Yeah, which is very nice.
And then if anything else hits, you can get them on top of that. After that, we add in the characters, so we have an Acolyte Icon Ward, who is probably the most important model on the list, and a Primus, just because the Psychers are super expensive, not super reliable, and close you to a war.
Agree. I find I end up just spending CP buffing putting their blessings around the board, and then it's just CP is very precious already.
There is definitely a consideration for running a Magus for Psychic Stimulus.
Yes,
because it's the only way to get access to fallback and shoot on Neophytes. But we'll talk about Neophytes later, about the sheer degree of chank you can do with that squad. I think that's probably the most interesting part of the army to talk about. So, and then you add in 3 of the support characters. You have a Calamorph, a Sanctus, and a Nexus. Sanctus gets Wormtooth, or Sanctus doesn't get a relic. The Nexus gets the 5 up CP regen and use the pass auras around ability twice per turn, and the Nexus and the Calamorph gets Wormtooth rounds. And those are the only 2 CP you spend on the list. Is those 2 relics? You don't take a world trait. You take nothing else.
Yeah, no traits. Sadly, none of them pass muster.
So bad.
Yeah, not worth it.
Maybe if I could put it on the Kellamorph, I would take Shadowstalker for being able to move him. But the elite characters can't have Warlord traits. So if I could have the Kellamorph able to run away when he was
run
charged,
away when charged,
I would
that would be
absolutely
so fun.
run that every time.
Yeah.
But that's the only one I would really consider. You could take Heroic Intervention on the Primus, which you can bubble around. But there's just nothing really worth Heroic Interventioning with in the list, so just kind of don't bother. So yeah, that's the core cards of the list. The idea of it is everybody thinks they know how hard it shoots. And everybody's wrong. And I'm going to be honest, that includes me, because I think I know how hard it shoots, and then I'm constantly over and underwhelmed by it simultaneously.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
The way that I've described it is that on average, your army is going to do exactly average damage, because you're generally hitting on like 3s you're rolling 1s, a +1 to wound.
Consistent.
One of your squads has got reroll 1s to hit. You've got 6s auto wound for one squad. You've got damage 3 on your seismic cannons and all this cool stuff. So you can do so many stratagems. But you've got the Flamer squad, the 3 squads of bikes, the 3 rock grinders, the Kellamorph, the Sanctus, and the 2 big squads of acolytes or neophytes, which is generally on your go turn, which is turn 2 when you deep strike in. You will, on average, across all of that, do just about average damage. The problem is, you have absolutely no effing control at all which units high roll and which units low roll. And it's insanely frustrating for that, since that's the thing I found most about it, is that if you plan it out perfectly, you can do disgusting damage with this list. If everything rolls close to average, or only rolls a little bit, only overrolls a little bit, if you can, you can set it up so you've got 3 units going into the one unit at the top, 3 units into the unit at the back, 3 units over there. But the problem is, the way that the army plays, it's always very isolated in pockets, because it's all pretty short ranged, it's all kind of off on its own. So if you have a unit at the bottom right that massively overperforms, and then the unit at the top left massively underperforms, you don't have any, recompense.
It's not always very connected up.
So I found that at LGT in a couple of games, so I had a really, really tough game against Necrons in round 1 and 3, but round 3 specifically, where the guy had 2 squads of 7 destroyers, which are horrifying for Genestealer Cult, and then a squad of wraiths in the midboard and a squad of wraiths at the top left. And I'm sitting there, and I get a bit of paper out and start planning where I'm physically putting models.
The big turn.
And I'm like, I need to kill these destroyers, tag these destroyers, kill those wraiths, kill those wraiths. The Silent King is wrapping a jackal in the midboard, so I get to at least ignore him. Not for lack of desire, but for lack of capacity. And it just... And then I low rolled by 1 destroyer at the top right of the board, and 1 wraith in the midboard. And I low rolled on the top left as well, but I recovered that by charging, and that's fine. Like, you've got recovery options, like the Goliaths are good at shooting and charging. You can you can throw good CP after bad if you want to with this army as well. There's lots of ways to buff up the jackals in shooting and combat. Like, you can throw a demo charge in combat, make it flat stick shots, hope for the best. Like, there's lots of things you can do. It just never feels good. But yeah, it was just like a slight roll, and then it's Necrons. They close the door on you, unfortunately. So that's been my biggest issue with it, is that the mental load is real. Because it's very it's a fairly complicated army to play.
That second
probably
turn
the most complicated army I've played.
Amount of admin. Like, it's just a massive amount of thinking.
Because you're dealing with, do you 8-inch deep strike? Do you 6-inch deep strike? Where's your unit going to 3-inch deep strike? Do you need to use 3-inch deep strike? Where do you deny primary? Do you need to deny primary? Because you have so many diverging paths, and every path impinges on the one next to it. So if I don't use the lying in wait to steal that objective, where do they go instead? And if I do that, where do I have to put the other damage? And how do I set up crossfire angles? And how do I keep a crossfire angle if I kill stuff? Because if I only kill if I kill like half a squad, can they pull casualties so that the second squad shooting them now no longer gets crossfire because I can't pull an angle? Where can I set up this from? You feel like a mad genius when it works, and you feel like an idiot when it doesn't.
That's very much the way.
Because ultimately, there's always going to be dice variance. Like, you can't account for everything. You will sometimes you're like, okay, so I'll start the chain by the rock grinder throwing 3 shots with a CP reroll, and if it hits any of its damage, 2 shots, or I'll fire 6 shots and you'll just miss them. And it's like, all right, cool. So I've now lost my crossfire chain. I've now got to spend another unit to get that. And the crossfire chain is very important, because the bikes get automatic exposed if they're within 6 of something, as long as it already has a crossfire token on it.
Yeah.
So you've got to start crossfire chains you've got to get them going for your acolytes. You can spend CP to make it, but you don't want to spend CP to do it. So you've got to chase the angles all sorts of places. It's also important to remember that units that don't have crossfire don't trigger that for you. So the non-Kelomorph and Sanctus characters don't give you crossfire, and neither do the Genestealers. The Genestealers are usually very deep in your opponent's deployment zone if they're still alive on turn 2, which means that they're not triggered crossfire for you, so you need to be careful to not give them. I recommend for anybody playing this army, get a line laser pointer.
Oh yeah, you definitely need it for the angles.
You definitely just want to get one. So firing sequences is super important. I don't know. It feels like you're kind of tooting your own horn when you try to explain to somebody how hard Genestealer Cult is, because they don't really see you doing that. They just see you dropped in, deleted all their stuff. And once you get to like a capacity where you're playing it, like the hard turns become less and less common. You just kind of instinctively get it, or when you don't have to like maximize damage output, you can just get good enough. And knowing when to call it an 80% good plan is part of the skill and the timing of that, because you don't want to clock out.
That's always my biggest fear with them. It's the main reason I've stayed away from GTs with them so far is I just don't back myself to consistently get through games in that time at the moment.
And then the other thing after that is that your go turn is super damaging. So the amount of damage output that army kicks out is insane. And the reason it's really good in the current meta is it almost feels facetious to say, but you're not wasting any efficiency on your guns, because in the meta right now, or as it was before the balanced data slate, there was a lot of transhuman, a lot of -1 to hit, a lot of -1 AP, all these kinds of things. So you're being defensive by nullifying your opponent's characteristics, and that's how you stay defensive, because your opponent's paying points for an AP3 gun. You drop it to AP2, you're in cover, you're on a 1-up save. Genestealer Cults, as a sum total list, don't have AP, don't care about hit modifiers, are +1 to wound but strength 4, so transhuman doesn't matter because they're probably wounding you on 5s or 4s anyway, and ignore cover. So all the things that people are using as defensive tools right now just don't matter. If you shoot a Leviathan Turreted Warrior, it's exactly the same as shooting against a Turreted Warrior from the 7th Ed Codex. It just doesn't matter. None of that stuff. Like, sure, you got a 5 vulnerable save. Good, I'm shooting you with an autogun. It's fine. I got 64 autogun shots. They wound on 5. They wound on 4, so I'm +1 to wound, and 32 of them have auto hits. Take 4 Turreted Warriors off, and you would table Leviathan Turrets at peak with this list. I've 20 nilled them in WC scoring. You get 51 points off them. I watched Eric, or the story that was going around from WGC was Eric played the Greek Turrets player who was playing 27 Leviathan Warriors. And the guy goes to his captain's like, I think this is an easy matchup. And then at the end of turn 2, he gets back and I said, I lost 20 of my 27 Turret Warriors. I don't know what happened either. And it's like, that does just happen. I lost 20, all 30 bikes on turn 2 against a Turret player, and then killed all 18 Warriors back.
Wow.
And it's just I lost half my army, and I still had enough damage I put in the tank to kill 2 squads of Turret Warriors. And a lot of that's because you can chase down the squads that aren't fully buffed. You go around the squad that has the 5 of Mimble, the 5 of Philippine, and all that stuff, right? You have, because you're a very fast army, you can do that. But it's insane. People just don't, people look at it and they're like, oh, so you don't, I'm playing Necrons, you probably don't kill stuff. And I'm like, well, no, so on average I can kill the Silent King and a squad of Destroyers and a squad of Wraiths, and then I'll start charging stuff. And then they look at it and they're like, how? And then you roll it, and they're like, oh, so this was the Silent King lived on 2 wounds, and that was, you rolled a below average there. Fuck. So the main combo is the Nexus sets up in reserve usually. The Primus starts on the board. The Nexus drops in next to the Primus and says those 2 units of Acolytes now are Neophytes are treated as being in range of him. So you get the 2 units of Acolytes from reserve, get reroll 1s. You could also start the Primus in reserve and drop him in, but then you have to drop him in where the Neophytes are, because he can use his abilities when he sets up, but the Nexus
if you
is the one that lets you Wi-Fi it.
Be further back.
The
That's
Nexus
also
can Wi-Fi
smart.
it.
It's another one.
But that means you don't get the reroll 1s to wound, because the Primus won't have been in range in the command phase. So that generally goes on bikes. So you generally have bikes getting reroll 1s to wound. They use it quite well as well, because you're chucking demo charge and stuff.
Oh, they absolutely do with the demo charges.
So you get reroll 1s to hit. One squad will pop probably 1 or 2 stratagems. You'll use +1 damage on your seismic cannons,
weapons,
which either pushes the small seismic cannon to 6 shots at strength 4, AP1 damage 2, +1 to hit, wounded, ignore cover, or the big one goes to 3 shots at strength 6, AP2 damage 3. You also have mortal wounds on 1s to hit, but you get to reroll that, and you don't have to do the mortal wound on the gun. You can take it on anybody. So we generally it's completely negligible. From there, you are just sinking damage out, but you can also do 6 to auto wound, and you can do if you don't have a crossfire token on it, you can spend 2 CP to give
you can just
the
get one.
seismic weapons crossfire. It
Yeah.
doesn't affect the guns. It doesn't affect the shotguns. But from there, you're then kicking out either 24 damage 2 shots or 12 damage 3 shots and 32 shotgun shots with ignore cover plus 1 to hit and wound. So against most stuff, 3s and 4s or 3s and 3s, depending on what it is, they're taking saves, but they're taking a lot of them. And that unit's only 180 or 200 points, depending on what upgrade you have on it.
Yeah.
That unit kicks out a lot of damage output, and then the bikes are another 2 bolt pistol shots each, and then 2 flamers and a demo charge. And then you've got 30 of those. The rock grinders are chucking out bigger, slightly better strength and AP and damage versions of the small guns. You can also pop plus 1 damage on them. You've got the flamer squad. You've got the characters. Kelomorphs are disgusting still. The 3 shots at strength 6 minus 3 damage 3 with plus 1 to hit and wound, so they generally don't mind.
Just beautiful.
The fun trick with them, the trucks all run demolition charges, so they can throw basically a battle cannon if there's something embarked in them. So Kelomorph disembarks from one truck, shoots, and then embarks into a different truck that's closer, so that one can chuck its guns because the Kelomorph can move. So you can have but you can't quite sequence it. So you shoot one, jump out with the Kelomorph, then shoot again, then jump back into another one because you have to disembark in the movement phase. But the Kelomorph can re-embark into a different truck than they got out of.
Nice.
So if you have one that's jumped forward with its acolytes, one that's got its acolytes and its Kelomorph still inside it, because the Kelomorph usually starts in the truck. For me, at least, I don't know how Eric was playing that. He can then disembark, and then if you're within 15 inches of the other truck, you can jump into it. Kelomorphs are so much fun. You can kind of fall into the trap of you want to use them for deep strike charges and tagging things because they can deep strike in, AOA, move 6, tag stuff. But it's so much more fun to just play them at the edges. And they are a lot of your damage output. So
and being able to get back in trucks and the is nice as well for just keeping him out of harm's way.
Exactly. Keeping him out of harm's way. It's fire and fade, right? So you can do so much broken stuff with fire and fade. And then the final, remember all that durability we were talking about? So there's this guy called an Acolyte Icon Ward. He does this action thing. If he doesn't advance, he can plant a flag and you get plus 1 to charge. You should probably do that most times he doesn't advance. But the real secret sauce is in the command phase. If you're within 6 of him, you just get D3 models back or D6 if you're neophytes. So bikes are 2-win models that are minus 1 to hit at all times. In this list, can't be wounded on 3s, have a 6 of feel no pain. They fall back, shoot, and charge for free. They have decent guns. Their guns are also pistols, so if you do end up trapped in combat, you can still shoot them. They run demo charges, which they can throw in combat. They can make them flat 6 shots. They can make them damage 3. The flamers are also affected by the plus 1 damage stratagem, so the Data Flamers become damage 2.
Yes, it's very nice.
And then there's also 2 Wolf Quads, which are the ones that are carrying those flamers. Those are 4-wound models. They're 4-up save, no invulnerable save. Don't worry about it. You don't need saves.
It's not about the save.
You just keep. So what you do is you just keep regrowing quad bikes. It's so you've taken 2 casualties on that squad. I guess I'll get D3 quad bikes back. Cool. And I'll do that again over there. And it breaks sequencing on abilities super hard because your 2-wound models or 4-wound models with a 6 of feel no pain. You can choose the order of incoming damage depending on the model. So all right, so I'm taking damage 3 saves. I'll just keep chucking these onto the bikes. Cool, a bunch of bikes have died. Or now you're firing damage 2s at me. Okay, I guess I'll take these on the quads, and it's going to take 3. It's probably going to take 3 wounds to kill a quad now. Oh, and you've killed 3 quads. I've had entire squads of crisis suits kill 6 guys. I keep the demo charge of the sergeant, and then the 2 quads come back at the front of the squad. At the front of the squad on a massive 60mm base of coherency of additional distance, and then drive directly forwards. It's cool. So I'm good. And they're moving 14 and they have a 9-inch pregame move. These guys are 12 point models.
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Or 14 point models.
The bikes are just so good.
Disgusting. They are the best unit. The Icon Ward is the best unit in this list. The Jackal's are the best unit in this codex.
Yeah.
Maybe Kelomorph.
I think that's probably, looking at it, that's the killer thing, right? That was what people weren't trying before. It's these great big slabs of bikes, as Eric and yourself has run. They are hard to shift. They, as you say, they give you that allocation. Their damage output is great, and then their fullback shoot charge. So they're just harassing and tying up and blocking. They take up so much space as well. So there's just infinite uses for them.
The case study game I have for this one, I played a guy round to a LGT with an Imperial Knights Freewood Lance. He went first in Data Scry Salvage, moved 3 Armigers out of his deployment zone, and then another model didn't leave his deployment zone. for the game. It's
That's
just
all you get.
he had one armiger killed the same quad bike 4 times, I think. Just charge in, tag you. All right, you killed. I might as well hit you with about 3s. I got feel no pains. You got to get through 3 wounds through to kill it to get past the quad bike. You're not doing that with 4 attacks that are 4s and 3s, mate. And then he killed one quad bike. That quad bike would come back, fall back, shoot another armiger, charge the same one again. You feel bad doing it sometimes.
It's ridiculous. Well, yeah, no. When someone, especially if they you hit at the moment, sort of turn 3 or 4, it's like, the bikes have got your number. You're not getting through it. And then someone just loses.
You have now killed them. Congratulations, you scored 45 no prisoners off my 24 wound squad. But I don't know if you've noticed that all these objectives have got a banner on them.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
And I've scored Brute Swarm 4 times.
By the way. So obviously you say the Icon Ward, and I agree. He's really, really useful, and bringing models back is massively powerful. How do you make sure he's in the right spot? How do you sort of
he comes out of whatever blip is the most aggressively positioned for you. So the blips are just very powerful. You get to decide where your buffs are after the fact. So if you go first, the bikes pre-game move forward. The Icon Ward takes the most aggressive blip, advances turn 1, stands behind a ruin with them. If you go second, you pre-game move all the bikes backwards into your deployment zone a little bit, drop the Icon Ward so he's within 6 of all of them, so if they take any chip damage, you're just getting distance on your opponent. And then almost like you have opponents that will just not shoot chip damage at you because it's not worth the 6 wounds of no prisoners they'll gain to give you 4, 5, 6 inches of movement on a squad of bikes, especially if you're not playing WGC pack where you can chain coherency. So in WGC, if you regain models, they all have to be placed in coherency with the squad as it was at the start of that phase. Outside of that, you can sort of place the first model in coherency, then the second one rechecks coherency, and the third one. So you can do if you have your squad like this, you can have bike come out at the front, and then quad even higher up, whereas in WGC you'd be restricted to just the first tier. So in UKTC on LGT boards, you can get a lot of distance if you roll a 3 on that D3 if your opponent's done too much damage to you. So you can almost distance. People will just, they'll not shoot chip damage at you because it's not worth it.
Makes the
which
problem
is fine.
It's Genestealer cult. You don't chip damage hurts. So if you can avoid that, it's great.
Every damage hurts, man.
Anything hurts.
No fear in life like somebody that actually brings intercessors. Terrifying, man. I can't kill them. I can't kill them fast enough for the points. And then there's one squad of Genestealers in those lists with the pre-game move.
The old they came from below pure strength, who are amazing, right? Just endlessly irritating for the opponent.
So the iteration of this list that Eric has moved to cuts almost all of the melee and just goes all in on the shooting. So I believe he's currently running 120 neophytes and 30 bikes.
Wow. I did wonder how long it would be before we saw neophytes go up into the 80s, 100s, 120s.
So I think the version of the list runs 3 squads with seismic cannons, 2 squads with flamers or something like that, and 1 squad just
I like flamers. I often run flamers.
The flamers are really good. They're just 5 points.
It's the cost. It's the cost,
and you have to take 20-man squads because you need access to that 4 special weapon, because you get 2 at 19, 4 at 20. Eric's been playing that. It's definitely very powerful. I don't think I could bring myself to play it at the moment.
I don't think I could either.
Considering moving up to 80 because I think there's a lot of play. I'll talk about some neophyte tactics in a minute as well. I think there's a lot of play in having 1 squad with mining lasers that sit at the back of the board with the Icon Ward. And then 3 squads of 20 to drop in because scoring ambush on turn 3 can usually be quite difficult. And having a third squad of 20. Cutting the trucks, I think, is fine. The trucks they allow your opponent to have good targets for their high damage weaponry, which this doesn't really have otherwise. So there's definitely merit in just skipping them all together. That frees up 330 points. So you get in, you cut the squad of acolytes with hand flamers, you cut another squad of 5 acolytes, add in 2 more 20 bricks, and another character to the Clamavus to open up secondaries a little bit easier. You definitely, there's a lot of play in the list still. I don't think it's solved by any means. Eric's been trying out the Reductus Trapateur with lying in wait. She's a good way to pop some mortal wounds on people. The Clamavus gives you action and shoot, so he can drop in, say to a unit of 20 guys, you can action and still shoot. They action for your R&D in that back corner and then still shoot, and then he can take the pistol that gives him the crossfire keyword, so he's another way to try and trigger some crossfire tokens. So there's still a lot of play in it. Eric played that at a team tournament and dumpstered everybody he played. It's horrifying to look at on the board because it's just so I had nothing on the board and then turn 2, every corner of the board is filled. You can't run. So one thing that I think people think when they hear GSC with a lot of stuff. So this list doesn't run fallback and shoot other than the bikes.
Yeah.
I'm going to try really hard to explain this. It might not sound great without visuals, but I'm going to do my best. So when you set up a squad of neophytes, you have a couple of choices to make. One is how close do you need to be? Because obviously the shotguns are 12-inch range. You get ignore cover if you're than 12. You need to be setting up crossfire lines, all these kinds of things. Line of sight is obviously very important. But they are, at the end of the day, guardsmen. And if they get tagged, they are generally not going anywhere.
No.
Because they're guardsmen. But there's a really cool thing you can do in this game called coherency. And then there's this really cool guy called the Acolyte Icon Ward that gives you D6 models back every phase.
Yeah.
Or every command phase. So what you can do when you set up squads of Genestealer called Neophytes is... You remember, like, peak 8th edition conga lining?
Yeah.
You still do that. You just do a little cluster at either end of, like, all of your heavy weapons set up in the perfect position to all be within 12 of your target, or to all be maximum distance, or whatever, right? And then you get charged, and then, you take, like, 14 casualties, and you intentionally pull, like, you leave the back of the squad and the front of the squad. So you leave the front of the squad so that the unit that's just charged you can't keep going that way. It's got to stay where it is for consolidation purposes. And the guys at the back have the guns, or they're next to the icon ward. And then, in the morale phase, you take your morale check, you lose a bunch of stuff, right? Because you're freaking a morale check, who cares? But morale checks happen before coherency checks. So the models that die, you pull from the bulb that's in combat, and then they also automatically die to coherency checks. So then, the other end of the squad is now all the way over there, next to the icon ward, gets D6 models back, and isn't in combat anymore, completely ready to shoot.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So you either have, like, you put your mining weapons at the back where they are just free to continue shooting next turn, or if you needed them to be forward, they're the first models you bring back with the D6 models back. Or you can give them the cult icon as well, where they get 2 D6 models back, but it still caps at 6. But then that's also 20 points. So you usually just if I roll a 1, 2, 3, sure, I don't get all the mining weapons back, or you split them 2 and 2 so that it's less. There's ways around it. The cool thing, I think, if you run the mining laser squad, is they can just kind of sit at the back of the board. They push forward a little bit because they're still only 24 charge weapons, but they can be like the 4 guys poking out of the wall.
Yes.
So if they don't kill all 20, you're getting your mining weapons back.
Yeah.
But it just keeps happening. And on boards like LGTs, where there's usually one objective that you can't hold from in a wall, but it is behind a wall, because the icon ward regeneration happens at the command phase before you score, because you score command points for primary at the end of the command phase. They come back in the command phase, then you score, so you can get back on the objective even if you've taken casualties. And it's very difficult to one-shot a squad of 20 neophytes. Like, most even Tag Crisis squads are not super viable to. Like, it's just, unless they're sinking a bunch of CP into it, and who cares? It's a 200-point squad of guys. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of play you can do in that. I think you could probably, if you still wanted to keep the combat, like you want to keep the pregame routines and stuff like that, Eric's list has gone completely away from that. Eric is probably in the conversation for top 3 best players in the world, so I'm not I don't
trust his judgment.
I don't know, man. Don't play what he's playing. Play what you can make work that he's playing, and figure out the rest from there. Because Eric will do things that Eric does things I don't understand with this list still, and I would consider myself to be closer to his level than most. Eric's a madman. He also has a very particular playstyle, and he is probably got the fastest fingers in 40k, so he doesn't clock out either. He's also like 20 years old. Like, come on, man,
wow.
your back is not going to do that for you. Like, no. I speak it to everybody, all of you Genestealer players out there. Your back isn't as good as Eric's.
It's a young man's game.
It is. So stick to your truck, stick to your Genestealers. Have the easy mode option once in a while. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to leave home with them without some combat, as you say. They always feel like a combat army to me, but as you say,
when I don't put a patriarch in my Genestealer cult list, I just why? What am I doing? Why am I playing?
I'm playing sad.
It does a little bit feel like you're playing guard with a funny hat on sometimes. And I think that is a shame. That was always my complaint about, like, the Achilles Ridge Runners list that we had at the end of 8th edition, was that I didn't just want to play guard in a silly hat. And this list is definitely it feels like a Scions list more than it feels like a Genestealer cult list.
Yeah, no, I agree. It totally does.
But I'm kind of, I don't know if I've become jaded in my years, but I've moved past such petty concern as whether my Genestealer cult list is fluffy in the interest of sheer dank
Hey,
elo gain.
in this edition and this measure, it's whatever it takes, right?
Exactly.
The Hivemind's not.
So that's why I took it to LGT, was because I thought it was comparatively well positioned in the meta. It has the tools to take on Tyranids, so I took it to Battle of Britain. It has the tools to take on Tyranids, which I thought were going to be very popular. It can play Tau because it's playing the same thing they are, where it's not, you can't interact with it on turn 1, you can't interact with it on turn 2. It's very strong into planes. Unfortunately, I did find that for me at least, it had a problem with Necrons. And I did lose a game to Tau as well. So I lost 2 games to Necrons and 1 game to Tau across the 7 games I played for the Invitational, the main event. But then I took it to Battle of Britain the weekend after, and I 19-1 Necrons, and it's got one of those things. If you're playing in a differential point tournament, especially, none of my losses were more than like a 12-8, 13-7 in WC scale.
So it's a good team.
You're having close games. If you're losing.
I found that even when the meta was much worse, I ran them when we came second at one of the teams tournaments, and they're just secondary. They're great. Well, yeah, Brood Swarm's fantastic. I was going to ask you about the secondary game actually. So I mean, Brood Swarm's amazing. They're really good at R&D. What other staples do you like when you're running?
For context, for anybody who's not fully aware of it, Brood Swarm was buffed in Nephilim. So it's now, for each of the 3 sections of the board, so your deployment zone, no man's land, and your opponent's deployment zone, you get 1 point if you have more models. Then you also get 1 point if you have more models on the board. I don't know if you've noticed a theme of all these Genestealer lists, but they're usually starting at like 80 models and going up from there.
A ton of guys,
and then finally, if you manage to complete all 4 of those conditions, you get a bonus point. The general play pattern I found for games you win is you score 3 points turn 1 because you have more models on the board, in neutral and in your deployment zone. Turn 2, you usually score 5 because you put 2 20s in their deployment zone and kill stuff as well, which is normal. So you reduce theirs as well. And then turn 3, you'll either score 5 or 3, depending on how your neophytes are doing in the deployment zone. And then you get, like, even if you only scored your deployment zone from there, that's still 15 points. So if you enter the Genestealer cult dying phase, it's not too big a deal.
It's a phase. It happens.
You can definitely, so you can usually max it by turn 3 or turn 4.
It's
R&D
a really
is
nice scorer.
almost guaranteed for 12 because you're playing Genestealer cults. You deep strike 6 away if you need to score points. But I prefer banners usually. Because the list just applies so much forward pressure, and you could score 15 points on banners.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
My brain is broken by differential scoring. I must score 100 points. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I never took Scramblers when Scramblers would think is 10.
Yeah. No, I get it though, and I think the ceiling on banners is a real incentive.
Also, banners plays like an endgame secondary sometimes. If you can raise like 1 on your home objective turn 1, you score 1/1/1 on that for turn 1 for turn 2, 3, 4, and then you push on turn 4. You raise 2 banners in the midfield. Or 3 banners in the midfield, 4 banners in the midfield, and then it's suddenly 4/4 for that. So you score 11 points off of doing basically nothing except win the game. So it's kind of, I've been calling it New the Last. It basically can be a secondary where you just say, if I win the game, I'm going to score 13, 14, 15 points on this. And sometimes you'll play games where you'll play Tyranids, and sure, you're not going to score banners turn 1 because you're going to score like 1 banner in your home, and then they're going to run gargoyles and turtle warriors and everything, and they're going to just play interference with you. And then turn 4 and 5, you go, you raise 6 banners. You can definitely have the 6 banner win condition, where turn 4 you raise 5 banners and you go 1/1/1/6/6, and you break your opponent's heart when you score 12 points on banners on turn 5. And I think it should honestly just be like a secret win condition. If you've ever raised 6 banners, you just win the game. I don't think anybody should be allowed to come back from that.
Hidden achievement, nice.
And then the last one will almost always be a kill secondary if your opponent gives one up, or ambush if they don't. Ambush being the Genestealer cult specific one for killing things with crossfire markers, with exposed.
Yeah, I found that one occasionally tricky, but you score fine on it. If the game's going well,
if you're not killing at least one thing with an ambush marker on it every turn, you're probably doing something wrong. So that's 5 points. Your drop turn is functionally guaranteed for 4 points.
Yeah, you usually get 4.
If you don't get a kill with a unit from reserve as Genestealer cult, I don't know why you're playing this army. So that's already pushing you up to 8. And I'd take, like, Assassinate's not going to be a 10 all that often unless you're getting very lucky. So, like, and then if you get a turn 1 kill with the Genestealers and you go first, that's 3 points there. If you can set up an exposed play on any other turn, that's another 4 points. Yeah. So it very quickly gets into the, like, you're scoring a comfortable 12 on it if you can play the game.
And it's one of those nice ones where you're doing stuff you just need to be doing.
It's stuff you're going to do anyway. It breaks your heart when you miss a kill by like 1 wound and have to charge it. It really does, but
where you had the exposed lined up, you're like, not quite. But,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think I had that at Battle of Britain. I missed the exposed kill 3 turns in a row, and it's just like, I tried really hard, man.
Yeah.
It's like
Did all
that one
thinking.
intercessor command rerolls his save, and you're like, fuck, that's 4 VP, literally gone. So yeah, that's just another one of those pain points for Genestealer Cult, where if you miss that exposed kill, it can definitely go downhill.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've talked a little bit about what a sort of bad and good matchups already. As you say, Necrons obviously can be a problem. I think things that have the ability to just leaf blower you off can be a problem. But it sounds like, as you say, it's a meta where there's plenty of stuff out there that they do like and that they have game into, and they've got tricks and tools for everything, which is a nice position to be in.
The list I've lost to with it, I've lost to Tau, Custodes, and Necrons, which are all any army with a high save, like a 3-up, 4-up save, 3-up save, 4-up invulnerable save, or 2-up armor save, are just inherently going to be a little harder because there's always that capacity that they just don't roll ones. They're not they're not unwinnable matchups by any means. They're all I've beaten all of those as well. Custodes accepted because I've only played them once. You definitely have that vulnerability to sometimes you just bounce. Against the Custodes I also played way too aggressively, so I'm factoring a little bit up to I had not played enough games with the list yet. Votann, for what it's worth, I think actually look like a pretty good matchup. For anybody who's interested,
that is interesting.
Are Votann's core thing is they kill you stone dead.
Yeah,
but everything kills Genestealer Cult stone dead. So like, do I care? Like, man, sure, your Beam Land Fortress really kills those 20 dudes, but you know what else killed those 20 dudes? They're 20 dudes. And they have a lot of mobility, which Votann can struggle with. And you can definitely tear down the primary. And Votann don't have great secondaries either.
No, and they don't have a ton on the board to dictate where you come down and where you hit them.
Right? So I've played a couple of games into Votann so far. They have generally the first one I played was hilarious. I played like a 6 Sagittar build with Berserkers and stuff like that, and I had tabled it on turn 3. I was like, I don't feel like this is representative of the game, but I'm gonna take it. But Necrons I've always found that are just that little bit where if you don't quite close the door on them, they slam it shut in your face.
That's the nature of them, right? As you say, if you have that low roll, that under commitment, they punish you because you're back. And I always find that with elves as well, right? With Necrons, it's like if you fall just short, a couple of them come back, and then you're done.
Well, the specific list that I played against double Catan in the one where I couldn't pregame move, and it's like, okay, so I just lost a turn of damage I put on the Catan, which is vicious. Horrifying. And then I played double destroyers, like 2 blocks of 7 shooting destroyers, and it was one of the most miserable experiences I've ever had in 40k. Was killing 6 of the 7. One of them reanimating, another one standing back up with the Technomancer, and 3 more of them standing back up with the Resorb. So I killed a squad I killed 6 of a squad of 7, and they had full shooting capacity again next turn, except for the 1 heavy destroyer. And it's like, if you'd failed 1 more 5-up, that squad's dead.
Yeah.
Like if you had failed like an average number, because when you're shooting that squad, you're putting like 12 damage 3 shots on it at AP2, which puts them down to their invul. And flat kills destroyers. So if you can put like a couple chip damage on them with the shotguns, so it kills the heavy destroyer straight as well. You're hitting on 3s, rolling 1s with 6 auto wounds. You average like 10 wounds to them. The averaged fail save is like 6.7 just to the seismic cannons, and then you have 32 shotgun shots to make them take 3-up saves. It's like you kill that squad like 80% of the time, and I've missed it 3 times now. It's like 3 out of 4 times I've missed it now. It's like heartbreak every time.
It's maddening. Because that's the thing. You only get to pull these moves a few times.
Yeah, exactly. You're playing Genestealer Cults. Turn 3 is the dying phase.
It's got to work. It's got to work. It's my favourite bit every game is taking photos when everything's popped up. It's like, we've got to get these shots now, because one way or another, there's not going to be anything here, right? Like, it doesn't matter how it goes, but there's not going to be anything like as many models in a minute.
The last thing I'll say for people, I've just spent a lot of time saying the army is quite complicated. It's not as complicated once you've played a couple of games with it. Definitely, you get into patterns with it. Things play the same way a lot of the time. You will commit your damage in the same ways. You'll make the same play patterns. Building those heuristics in your head takes a couple games, but once you've got them, the list becomes. It's like fitting jigsaw puzzle pieces together. You might not have the full jigsaw yet, but you can start to see the picture of it. And then all you've got to do is you've got to fiddle around with the edges a little bit once you're getting into those complicated situations. If you've got the capacity to sink 10 games into this before your next event, I don't think this is something you shouldn't play if you can. You can definitely make it work. There were more GSC at LGT than I expected. I think there ended up being like 5 or 6 versions of this list.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the melee lists aren't terrible. Like there's definitely still play them. But I know I've just spent a lot of time saying that this is why you should play the shooting build, because it's what's proven to be working at the moment. But we're going into a new meta. We've just seen nerfs a bunch of stuff. You could maybe get away with running more combat now.
The sort of Twisted Helix pure strain heavy lists are still very fun and very punchy. It's just whether they have.
I think that's a
matches.
list that's like a 60% list is what you're aiming for. Whereas this list is pushing for wins at tournaments. That's kind of where I'm.
Yeah, and I think that's what to me is really drawing me at the minute is that it feels like as you say I think these lists that are currently out have to an extent simplified it because again they've lent into a sort of clusters of several very reliable units that do a very reliable job in a particular way, slightly simplifying how much of the big range of jank that you can take for the sake of making that plan work. And what's cool is that there's a game into a whole bunch of different things, and it's just figuring that out and working your way through it. It doesn't feel like there are matchups where you're not in it.
Exactly. The core concept
that's exciting.
I have a bunch of obstacles that can come in away from you and charge you. Like sometimes you drop those neophytes in and just roll 8s, which become 7s because you have the icon more +1 to charge. You have the squad that comes in 3 away that just goes, if you don't fully bubble this objective, I'm going to steal it off you. You have Rogue Intervention. The core concept of I have good secondaries because Brutestorm is great. I have a good Shadow Operation secondary and I will take a kill secondary that will get me 10 points. And then I am going to murder your primary, and all my stuff is OBSEC. You've got advance and charge acolytes out of trucks that have ridiculous threat range. If you can give your opponent a 0 turn 1, it forces them to become the aggressor on you. People don't want to push at you because that opens up their backfield. People don't want to sit in their backfield because that gives you points. That creates that imbalance where Genestealer player can exploit. And good players will not give you those opportunities as much, but you can't not give Genestealer opportunities because they come in so damn close to you.
Yeah.
So the core concept is just there. You can take that as a baseline, and probably with this list, you will win as much as a Helix list is, but while not having perfected that. And then once you perfect getting your damage output right, you can make this list sing. It is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, I lost 75% of the games I lost with this list was an LGT weekend, and I was drunk for half of those now. So I don't even chalking up all of those to being on the list. Other than that, this list has been. Like I think I'm still rocking like an 80-odd% win rate with this list.
Yeah, it's super exciting,
super good,
and it's nice. It's so funny.
Fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, and that's it. I've enjoyed the games with it a lot. Like it's been really fun to play.
And I want to one more thing because I know you said 55 minutes.
No, that was for your sake. If you want to keep going, we keep going.
I'm just like I keep saying one more thing. What the hell have I been doing for the last 8 years of playing 40k competitively that I've been running melee lists? This shooting shit is so much fucking easier.
I know.
I just show up and I point guns at it and it's dead now. I don't have to move. It feels
wrong when I do it, man.
I don't know. I don't know what I've been doing with myself for years.
I had one GT with Harlequins. I was like, what the frick is this? He didn't even get to me, and I just shot him all away. It's bizarre.
I spent years being like, right, how do I make this? Like, I was like, how do I make this jank melee list work? How do I? Yeah. All my lists are turbo.
How do I reach him? How do I get in there?
I'll reach into the jank tank, and I'll pull out I'm like in the Drakari man. I was like, all right, so I'm going to play Bellacore and Death Guard Contemptors, and I'm like, dude, I am working so hard right now for garbage. And I was like, what if I just don't have to roll charges? Because I had noticed for me personally, a lot of the games I'm losing in events now are because I failed short charges.
Yeah.
Which is generally a good sign that you're playing well.
Yeah.
But also a sign that your playstyle the thing you're trying to play has flaws.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, when your event win comes down to whether you make a 6-inch charge or not, yeah, man, you set yourself up really good to be in the position to hit that 83% chance, but you're going to miss that. And I'm like, what if I just stopped doing that?
Yeah.
So this shooting stuff, I don't know why everybody doesn't do this. And I've noticed that Tower are quite good right now. So has anybody's got dirt and trousers and whatnot?
No, I know exactly what you mean. It's funny as well because there's different types of players, right? I always think there's players for whom combat has always been the way, and then there's some that just always love shooting. And with GSC it's that evolution because I was definitely drawn to the army because of the combat, but as you say, these lists can squeeze so much out.
The weird thing is, once you've got I've got those mechanics, but I know how to play combat now. I just do that with the shooting army as well. I just don't expect to do any damage with it now.
Yeah, that's it. You just
I know how to get. I'm gonna just go and if people are like, I'm gonna hug you, I'm gonna wrap your neophytes. I'm cool, buddy. I'm wrapping you back.
Yeah.
You're not getting out of here either.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, cool. So I've wrapped your bikes. I'm like, yep, cool. My bikes have wrapped you. I'll stay here. Fine.
Yeah, we can do this all day.
It's great. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, no, likewise, and I think, as I say, it takes time and takes the reps, and this is something I'm really, my goal this year is definitely to get a place to run them for several events and try and get on the sort of the rankings for them, and I'm working towards that now. And as you say, it's not that it's super difficult. It's just one that rewards that preparation and that thinking through, and as you say, knowing what damages what. But yeah, it's an exciting time. I think we're going to see more and more iterations on the Eric list popping up, and so hopefully the future is bright for the cult.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've convinced a couple of people to take it to Coventry. I think Eric Herger is going to be taking it, or a variant of it. So I'm looking forward to that. And I am not committed to what I'm taking to Coventry yet either. I am playing Kraken this weekend, but submission is not till Sunday. So there is.
See how you feel.
There is definitely a very real chance I still take Genestealer Cult.
Well, I'll be rooting for you either way.
If my ego can handle having another weekend like LGT though, so that's kind of why I'm like, I don't know. I had a real rough Saturday night. It was not fun to be around.
It's a chance to vanquish those demons, though, right? That's appealing.
It's a chance to vanquish the demons, or to summon them eternal,
or to embed them into you forever. But
exactly. Like, do I really want to be a broken man on Sunday when I'm traveling home, or would I like to have a shred of dignity left? At least if I lose Eternus, I can say I was trying something new. If I go back with Genestealer Cults, I knew what I was getting into.
That's true. Well, I'll be interested to see what you end up doing either way. And I'll hopefully get them out to some events soon as well. So really exciting. And thanks for running us through. I learned a lot there, and I've been playing the army a lot recently, and there's a lot of really interesting things there about the way you say it, and it's interesting to hear about the directions that Eric is thinking of taking it as well. More bikes, more neophytes, more guns. Let's have at them. And
what if we just took out all the combat?
Innes, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Really, really fun to talk to you, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon to ruminate further.
I'm just glad I could come on to talk about an army with a 6+ Feel No Pain on this show.
Yes.
That was the
dream. We had the actual 6++. Oh, beautiful. Plus. Yeah, the actual.
You missed the plus, dude.
Oh, I missed the plus. Oh. So I'll change it to that War Convoy show. That'll do. That'll be the name. Fantastic. All right. Well, we will sign off there. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for having me. See you later, guys.